I'm Clare Williams. I'm a trustee of the Socio-Legal Studies Association, and I'm delighted to be speaking with Dr. Jana Norman, winner of the SLSA Book Prize for Socio-Legal Theory and History 2022. Dr. Jana Norman is a researcher in environmental humanities at the Faculty of Arts, Business, Law and Economics at the University of Adelaide. And Dr. Norman tweets at Cosmic Person, and you'll find links to social media below. Now, Dr. Norman's book, Posthuman Legal Subjectivity, Reimagining the Human in the Anthropocene, provides a reimagining of how Western law and legal theory structure the human-earth relationship. Now, Jana, this is a really rich contribution to socio-legal theory, so I'm almost not sure where to start as there's so much to talk about, but let's start with how the book came about. Can you tell me a bit about the journey that led to it?
Thanks, Claire, and I'm really pleased to be here, and thank you to the SLSA for this opportunity to talk about the book, and also for the great honor of receiving the prize. So how it came about, Thomas Berry, people might be familiar with him in relation to Earth jurisprudence. He had a book in 1999 that I read in about 2005. And he was talking about this sort of mode of consciousness in Western culture. He was a cultural historian, a theologian. He called himself a geologian because of his interests in the environment and the community of life on Earth. And he put his finger on what he considered to be kind of the driver behind anthropogenic climate change, this radical discontinuity between humans and the rest of nature. And that really captured my imagination. He also had an idea of how we might move beyond that as a culture, as Western culture. And he talked about, he thought in big epochs or eras, and he talked about the Ecozoic era, or a time when human beings learned to be present to the planet in a mutually beneficial manner. And that fired my imagination too. And as I began to think that through and work on that, and bring it into a PhD program at the University of Adelaide Law School, it kind of developed. I became dissatisfied, I guess, at where it left off, at the inspiration of that idea. It made sense, it made intuitive sense, but I wanted to go deeper. Why? What is that? And have some critical structural reflection about what is that mode of consciousness and how do we shift it? So that led to an interest and investigations in Val Plumwood, who's an Australian philosopher, and her unpicking of the logic of structural ontological dualism. And also at the University of Adelaide, Nari Nafeen, who wrote the most comprehensive cataloging of the concepts of the legal subject. She's also based at Adelaide. And so I had wonderful access to some principal theory around this, what I came to see as a real PowerPoint in the whole power dynamic and the structure of the human-earth relationship and the structure of law, and that's this concepts of the legal subject. If you, as Nafeen says, the idea of the legal subject is where, what comes to matter at law comes to matter. It's codified or condensated within that. This notion that she talks about is really fuzzy, like we don't think about it. It's one of those ideas that sits behind and is taken for granted and isn't unpacked very often. But I wanted to get in there, and I thought Plumwood's analysis of structural dualism was a good way in. So that's the long story of it. It was like a map of little nodes that lit up and somehow came together in the project.
Thanks, Jana. Can you tell me a bit how the concepts, when you say you wanted to go deeper where Barry's work left off, when you were at Adelaide, doing the first PhD, because I understand you're now doing a second PhD, how did those concepts develop, and how did the concept of the cosmic person emerge? And then how did it develop into the book?
There's so many ways to enter that question. There's the very material how of it, and I think I'll go there because that's kind of key to the whole argument. But one thing led to another. So in the context of a gender alliance group, so a research group of gender scholars, I came across Karen Barad and New Materialism and Rosie Braidotti and Posthumanism. And those started to sit there as a conceptual field for reimagining human subjectivity. But this niggling question of, okay, so we've got this idea that there's this mode of consciousness about radical discontinuity, but where does that come from? What's the structure of it? And I started to sense, I had mentioned that Barry is a cultural historian and he thinks of these big epochs. And as a feminist scholar, I had a growing awareness that you have to, that the material realities subtend and dissect, and they take root in different ways for different people within the power structures of cultures. And so that I wanted to get in there. Well, who is the we? Who are the human beings that we're talking about? And so that's, again, just through wonderful contacts in and around Earth jurisprudence and socio-legal studies, Anna Greer, Peter Burden, started making connections that moved me towards this Val Plumwood and a feminist critical ecology approach to understanding the structure behind this mode of consciousness, and understanding how structures shift. So as the sort of post-structuralist feminist critique came on the scene.
Thanks, Jana. Can you tell me a little bit about the concept of the cosmic person? And in later chapters in the book, you explore some case studies where you put into practice, which I think is from field work. Can you say a little bit about how that came about?
Yes. Again, the specifics of the field work came about in that wonderful connectivity of research ecologies. You meet people and they connect you with others and so on. But to go back a couple of steps around this cosmic person and how I was led in that direction and why that case study fits. The cosmic person, if I were to sum it up, is an attempt to create an alternative, a non-dualized alternative construct of human identity that can answer or correct, as a corrective, I guess, to the prevailing construct of human identity that fits into and maps across that murky notion of the legal subject, who we're talking about when we're talking about the human legal subject, maps directly onto this dualized human construct of identity. So it's the master identity, or it's the idea that humans are separate from and superior to nature based on the capacity for reason. So without throwing any babies out with the bathwater, without either collapsing into undifferentiated, a singular ontology, I needed to find some ways to replace the human out of this naturalized hierarchy of being. So the process of doing that with the Plumwood stuff, what she does is she unpacks the features of structural dualism. So then I could look for what are alternatives to each of those features. And Plumwood also maps that out. She calls it an escape route from dualism. And it has to do with these assumptions that are built in to dualism. So they're sitting there, the assumptions, the alternatives that Plumwood signals and maps out. And then her endpoint, so the book I was using was 1993, Feminism and the Mastery of Nature. And in her map of the escape route and at her endpoint, she says, but there's no story that's enough to push us into, to get us on that road. There's no story of human significance that is significantly different enough from the story of human beings superior to and separate from nature. There's nothing, science hasn't done it. If you follow that science replaced theology, we've still got a hierarchy, a naturalized hierarchy going. So looking into new materialism and posthumanism that want to describe a different ontology that has as its basis relationality rather than hierarchy, that from that I was able to draw out from that this story of human significance. Our significance is based in the fact that we're made of stardust, just like everything else. But there is differentiation within that. It's just not primary or ultimate. And that's where I went back to Barad. So the cosmic thing comes from this idea that there's a level of materiality at which entity is not the primary ontological reality. It's phenomenon or relationality or interaction. And that all comes from the very complicated unpacking of quantum physics by Karen Barad. But I connected that, and connecting it with the Big Bang Theory, deep history, deep time, big history. If everything is stardust, if everything is elemental, pre-elemental, phenomenological, then we're intra-relating, we're interacting rather than dominating. And it sets the human within. Within the whole community of life on Earth in a very substantive material way that is also meaningful. So I talk about normative materiality. So that led to, where are these, this is the phenomenology of this ontological reality presents a construct of human identity and the legal subject that has a performativity to it. So I was looking, where's the performance of this? Is it anywhere within the law? And the answer was sort of yes, to the side, adjacent, law adjacent. So I found it in this case related to, it was a mediation agreement resolving some issues and conflicts of interests around water usage on Kauai and the Waimea River in Hawaii. And I suggest that the cosmic person, so this entangled, materially entangled, embodied and embedded human being, co-constituted with all that is, being made up by stardust, constantly, always, already, phenomenologically worlding. I could see some of those, I could glimpse that in the way the agreement was made. The idea of mediating, of having to come together to relate and to negotiate shared interests, and in the fact that the river becomes a person with interest within the context of the agreement. The whole thing hinges on the needs of the river but again, in relations. So I felt that it had this particular case does perform the essential thing that I drew from Plumwood that describes the character or the performativity or what makes up the human as the cosmic person and the legal subject. And I always like to read it because I can get these things mixed up a bit. So rather than, and this is based on the features of dualism and how non-dualism inverts them. So the cosmic person acknowledges dependency, this co-constitutionality, and affirms continuity. Everything is made of stardust, is being made of stardust. And yet it recognizes the independence of the other and recognizes difference within that. So Plumwood's definition of non-dualized identity is the recognition of a complex interacting pattern of both continuity and difference. And that's what I think the cosmic person and this phenomenological ontology allows for. So within, and I saw that happening within the decisions that were being made within the Waimea agreement. That's the short answer, believe it or not.
Thank you, Jana. I really enjoyed reading the cosmic person and seeing how it might play out, and seeing, reading through the Waimea case study that you included. And for me, one of the big takeaways was that your exploration of the dualisms and breaking them down and inverting them. And for me, that was hugely transferable beyond thinking about legal personhood and the Anthropocene and environmental jurisprudence, but thinking to other areas of jurisprudence as well, that are equally hamstrung by dualities and limitations with the words that we have, the vocabularies that we have, and the mental models that we're working with. And I was really taken with your analysis and your working through the dualism and the transferability of the conceptual and the theoretical. But I just want to finish up with asking, really, what are your plans for this? Has it evolved since you published the book, and where do you see it going?
I mean, I can think of a couple of directions that I would really like to see the cosmic person moving in. One is towards intercultural dialogue, because the field that I am working from, this idea of addressing or responding to anthropogenic climate change and issues about on the environment, they're just so urgent and so big. It has to be cross-cultural and intercultural in terms of responding to these issues. And I think that by sourcing from within Western culture, and this is where I locate myself, so sourcing from within our own culture, a non-dualized ontology, I think that puts us in good ground for accessing equally and on par with, to access the values and the modes of relating to the earth that are endemic to other cultures, and that have always had a non-dualized ontology. So if we can source that from with our own, we can come to the table on equal terms and truly cooperate around these substantive issues that we're facing, specifically around the environment. But then moving out from there, I do want to I want to see what happens and see what others do in other fields of law, legal theory, other fields, really taking seriously this non-dualized construct of human identity, wherever the rational, autonomous individual as a construct of humanity, of human being, that human identity that maps out of dualism, wherever that rational, autonomous individual is problematic, which I would say is in all human and human, non-human interactions, then how does a thoroughly relational construct of human identity? And so I go back to, this is, when I say thoroughly, I mean all the way down, you know, ontologically relational construct of human identity. What alternatives does that offer in everything?
That's really exciting, and I look forward to seeing where the cosmic person as lens takes us, and what we can learn through looking through it and seeing the world differently. Thank you so much for speaking with me today. Dr. Norman's book, Posthuman Legal Subjectivity, Reimagining the Human in the Anthropocene, is published by Routledge and is out now in hardback and ebook. And we'll include links to the book below, so please do check it out. If you've enjoyed this video, please click the thumbs up button. Please subscribe to the channel and check out our other videos with other prize winners and news of what's going on in socio-legal scholarship. Thanks for watching.